the end of the day, selling is transferring a feeling. If you don't have the feeling, you can't transfer it. If you don't have a good, positive feeling, dude, you're an actor. You have to sell and run your business from a place of positivity. And however you get there, God bless you. Welcome to episode 106 of the Pete Primeau Show. And we are here with a coach's coach, Marc Mawhinney from Canada. And I cannot wait to talk to Marc. We've got a great show for you. Bear with me while I pay the bills. What are you waiting for? Sell a million, 101 tips for furniture and mattress stores to make another $1 million this year. And I'd like to thank Steve Hauk and all my friends at the Mattress Industry Network, over 1,700 strong and growing every day. If you are in the mattress industry, we want you in the Mattress Industry Network group. It is a group run by retailers to help everybody build, market, sell, and succeed in the mattress industry. So if you haven't joined, join and tell them Pete sent you. Scan me right there. Marc, welcome to the show.
Hey, Pete, thanks for having me.
A little bit about Marc. He is a coach's coach. So coaches that do professional coaching for a living come to Marc to learn how to coach better and more effectively. And he runs a group on Facebook that's just a little bit shy of 24,000 people. I happen to belong to that group, and I have for several years. He also runs Natural Born Coaches, and he has a monthly Secret Coaches Club newsletter that you should all subscribe to. If you are involved in the coaching industry, you should definitely do that. Hi, Stu. It's about time, Stu. I thought you left me for dead, brother. I'm glad you're here. And who else was there? Kyle and Guy Danes from South Africa. I'm so glad your stuff got there. I sent them some stuff about 6 or 8 months ago. They finally got it. I don't even want to know who delivered it or how, but it got there in one piece. Thank the good Lord. So, Marc, I often talk about why people should hire a coach, whether you're a business owner or you're a professional salesperson. I often talk about that, but I'm going to give you a failure in my life. I was powerlifting, and I flew all the way to Las Vegas. I drove another hour and a half down to, I forget the name of the town in Nevada, and I bombed out of my meet because, number one, I didn't have a coach. And number two, I didn't have a team. Nobody would help me with my bench shirt. And I said, I'm never going to allow this to happen to me again. So I hired a coach for powerlifting. For those of you who don't know powerlifting, there's 3 lifts: the squat, the bench, and the deadlift. But then after I really got good at the 3 basic lifts, I niched down again and I hired a bench coach, and I drove 8 hours to work out with my bench coach. And that led to 24 or 26 world and national powerlifting titles in about 4 years. So I never lost again. And that failure was kind of what prompted me to hire a coach. I've also hired coaches in business. And Marc, why should somebody hire a coach?
Well, I have I say a similar story, not a powerlifting story, but a story from my past when I screwed up by not hiring a coach. So to make a really long story short, prior to starting coaching in 2014, back around in 2000, I got started in real estate, and that was in my 20s, the Stone Age. But basically, I spent almost a decade building up a real estate business that got quite large here in Canada. And I think I'd been doing it for about 6 years or so. And at that time, I'd build a good sized team and everything was rolling. It was hockey stick growth every year with commissions and revenues and stuff. And one day, a business coach, a local business coach, came into my office to speak with me, to talk with me about me hiring him as a coach. Now, at the time, I hadn't really heard of it. If I thought of coaching, I would have thought of sports, athletics, because this is roughly 2006 or in that ballpark. So coaching wasn't what it is nowadays. And basically, I said to him, thanks, but no thanks. In my mind, I was thinking like, oh, look how well I'm doing. Do I look like I need any help? And what had happened a couple of years after that, everything came crashing down. And it was quite messy and was not a fun time. So I thought back at that point when everything collapsed, and I thought, geez, maybe I should have listened to that fellow a little bit more instead of shooing him out of the office and moving on with my day. I didn't make the mistake again, later on in life, going through other challenges and troubles. I hired several coaches and was helped by a few mentors that were important as well. And that's how I got started in coaching. It's 2014. I was getting ready to get back into business. And I thought, I know coaching because I got a front row seat to it. And this is something I want to do. And here we are almost 9 years later.
So one of the little pieces of advice that I give, and we're going to delve into this a little bit later, is never hire a coach who has never hired a coach, because he or she, they don't know what they're doing. If number one, to be a really good coach, you have to be coachable first and foremost. And, the thing that you mentioned, you were having success in your real estate career. And so when this coach kind of emerged, you said, nah, I don't need him because I'm doing well. Well, what if Michael Jordan, just said, good's good enough, and he never hired Tim S. Grover, or Kobe Bryant never hired Tim S. Grover to be their coach, their conditioning coach? What would their careers have looked like? Would they have been shorter? Would they not have had as much success? Maybe even they may not have had as much fun, because when you perform at high levels, you tend to have a lot more fun. So, it takes a certain person to be able to be humble enough to hire a coach, but it takes an aggressive person to hire a coach too. So it almost, to me, I had to have the failure because I was doing so good by myself in powerlifting that I didn't need anybody. And then that failure kind of spurred me on. And the interesting thing as a salesperson, as a road rep, I was having a lot of success, and I started to see this guy on LinkedIn, and he was making me think maybe I don't know everything. And I hired this gentleman. His name's Paul Castaigne, and he was my sales coach for several years. And the growth that happened during that period was just absolutely phenomenal. And right now I'm looking for my next coach. So what do you see when you're looking at, what needs to happen to somebody to internally be ready to flip the switch and say, you know what? Maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I could learn something from someone, and maybe a coach would help me, especially business owners, because I couldn't think of anybody that needs a coach more than a business owner, because everybody around you is going to tell you what you want to hear, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's a vendor or whether it's an employee, right?
Yeah, you made a good point earlier, Pete, that sometimes it takes being humbled. Because I prided myself back in my real estate days of being a lone wolf, even though I had 100 agents and employees that were on my team. When I was approached by that coach and different things, I was like, no, I built this up on my own. I don't need any help. And sometimes it's just age and experience. I got a few more grays in the hair and the beard than I would have had back in the day, but you learn things, and hopefully you learn going through life and take those lessons and do better the next time. The challenge and I see this even with people who are coaches or in the personal development world, often are very big readers and learners. Like they're buying a bunch of books. I see you've got a bunch there, Pete. I know people watching this are probably avid readers as well. So I say common sense. The thought would be, well, why would I hire a coach for X thousands of dollars when I could get a book for $20 and learn, just the same thing or whatever? Well, there's some great books I've learned. Don't get me wrong. There's some books I've learned a lot from, but it's really hard to replace a coach with a book, hands-on type thing. And the same goes for, you can be the most disciplined person in the world. You could be like David Goggins, for example, and have this drive, this motivation, everything, but it's hard to see the forest for the trees, and you're a little too close to the situation sometimes. So I've had cases where coaches have pointed something out to me, and I'm like, gee, why didn't I think of that? Well, they had the benefit of being just a little ways away, looking in, second set of eyes, and it made me think about things differently.
Yeah. Perspective, another set of eyes and ears is invaluable. And when that eureka moment happens, you're like, why didn't I see it? Well, it's human nature. Sometimes we're too close and we just can't see the forest for the trees. And it might be an obvious change that you need to make. It might be a whole nother revenue stream that you didn't even think of. And, I worry about our business owners, specifically my store owners that run mattress stores, that run furniture stores. And, they're so busy running the stores that they don't really have as much time as they'd like to read the books and to listen to the podcasts and to expose themselves to all those ideas, which is great. But applying it to your business specifically is kind of where a really good coach comes into play, and then creating action items to work on. The best coaches are not your friends. They are a bit of a taskmaster, but they're agreed upon task. This is what we need to move the ball forward. And seeing the big picture, to me, is huge with a coach. And one of the reasons that I joined your group, because what I want to do in my retirement, full confession, is I want to be a coach. I've got 41 years of experience that I want to give people, and I want to give back to the industry that's been so good to me and help basically a poor boy have a great life. And the coaching jungle was the first step in that, for us to meet. When you think of really great coaches versus good coaches, what are the differences, and what should a business owner or a sales rep be looking for in a coach?
Well, again, you touched on it just a second ago, Pete. Is you're not hiring a friend. You've got plenty of options if you want to go grab a beer with someone, a buddy. That's not what they're hiring for. And I find coaches have a really tough time with this too, because I think a lot of coaches naturally are people pleasers. They're human. They want to be well liked. So it can be difficult to hold a client totally accountable with it, because you don't want that client to, they're paying you and you think, oh, gee, I don't want to insult them or upset them or whatever. Unfortunately, you're doing them a disservice if you behave that way. You're doing it for their own good by calling them out on stuff, and you don't have to be a prick about it. There's ways that you can do it and keep them accountable and still maintain a good working relationship. One of the coaches that I think is really good with it, Steve Hardison, who wrote the book The Ultimate Coach, or his wife actually wrote the book about his life and his coaching. He operates his coaching business almost the opposite of how most coaches would think to do it. So he's charging over six figures to work with them now. I think it's $100,000 and some $1,000. work with some really high performers, but he won't fly to meet them. They have to go to Arizona. They have to fly or drive to Arizona to go to his home office to sit down with them. And he has a whole process in place there. Now, what would most people think? Well, gee, they're paying me six figures. When they say jump, I should be saying how high and hopping on a plane and going wherever. But Steve doesn't do that. He says, no, you got to come to me with it. And he tells it that there's other examples in that book where one of the women coming to him basically asked for a single mom discount, with it. And he said, I'm not going to give you a discount here because that's not doing you a service, and you'll come up with the funds if we're meant to work together and if you want it bad enough, basically. And it ended up working out with it. So just a few counterintuitive things there that he does, which I think is a good example to answer your question.
Yeah, that's great. It reminds me of Dan Kennedy.
Yeah.
Kennedy does not travel anymore. He hasn't for years.
You have
He
to fax him.
basically,
You can't even email him or whatever. He says, basically fax me, which everyone probably think, what's a fax machine? He makes it hard to get in touch with him, but that also increases his value. He does a great job at it.
yeah, he really does. And he tells a story I think it was in Florida. It was at one of his big GKIC events when they were in their heyday, and he said, you cannot hold yourself hostage to the fact that some people will and some people won't. And he was specifically talking about people who create products and whether or not the person that buys the products actually engages and actually benefits from the product. And what he encouraged everybody to do is think about this story. There was a couple who he didn't see. Well, there was a whole family that was at at a conference many years prior to this, who barely had enough money to scrape together. They had to charge, I think, 3 or 4 different credit cards, a little bit of the fee for the conference. So if he would have come in and made a moral judgment and said, you know what, this is probably too much for you. If you got to put it on 3 or 4 credit cards and to scrape this together, it's probably not for you. The thing that he found odd is they disappeared on the breaks. He never saw them eat any food. He later found out they basically were living on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches up in their hotel room. They went on to become multimillionaires, what they learned at that seminar. So if you're in business, you should never feel bad about what you charge for anything, whether you're a coach or whether you own a store. If you're providing real value, one of the things that I really became intrigued about, Mark, and you write about it almost incessantly, is encouraging coaches to focus in on the results that they get for their clients instead of focusing in on how much time is elapsing in a session. So I thought, if I'm going to hire a coach, I don't want somebody who's just going to make small talk with me, give me a couple pointers, and fill up an hour of coaching. I want somebody who's helping me get to where we agreed we need to go and who's actually delivering value rather than time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of my offerings, I do a laser coaching package, and they're 15-minute sessions. I learned it from Rob Goyette. And when I first started doing it, 2019, I think was when I first started offering it. I thought, oh God, 15 minutes. I'm a bit of a talker, that's gonna be tough to cram things into 15 minutes. Where I've done enough of these now, I've offered it a number of times and worked with a lot of people. You'd be surprised when you really focus on getting right down to business. Now, I mean, if I was coaching you, Pete, and we hopped on Zoom, it's not like I'd be like bang right away, like within 5 seconds jumping into it, but I wouldn't spend 5 minutes talking about the weather in Cleveland, which is probably just as bad as here in Canada right about now.
Pretty close.
Yeah. We wouldn't talk about how the Guardians are going to do, this baseball season coming up and all that stuff. So you get really good with it. And what I've found is I can get more done with those clients in 15 minutes of concentrated effort than some people that will just, jibber jabber for an hour and a half. I enrolled in a program last year, and it was, there's some good stuff in it. But what I found, the person that created the program, he had, one of the things he did was live calls with everyone could jump on. And they were about 3 hours each, 2.5 to 3 hours. They really should have been about 20 minutes. There was about 20 minutes of actual valuable stuff there, and the rest was just kind of nonsense. And that was kind of disappointing. I thought I would much rather have 20 minutes of targeted good stuff, and then I can get out and get to work on putting it into action, as opposed to dragging things on for 2.5 or 3 hours just to feel like, oh, I got my money's worth. I don't care about that. I'm just looking at results.
So when we're thinking about hiring a coach, what would be your number one? Well, Guy Danes, look at you. This is Kyle Danes. Kyle asks, would you agree that coaches need to have experience in the trenches in business and personal aspects so they can pass on their message quicker, helping the client collapse the timeline? That's a great question.
It is. Yeah, that's actually a common debate. It's been talked about in the Facebook group sometimes. And, to paraphrase, some people have asked, does a coach have to have achieved X to help someone achieve X as well? And the way that I've always looked at it is, Grant Cardone said something good. He said he's been helping people become millionaires, but he wouldn't help people become billionaires because he's not a billionaire. He says, yeah, he's a positive thinker, I guess, with it. Same thing goes with sports like baseball. Some of the best managers out there weren't very good players, like Joe Torre. I'm reading a book, Joe Madden, former, Tampa Bay manager, Chicago Cubs, Angels. He was a really, not a great minor league catcher and didn't even make the bigs, but he was an excellent manager with it. So I think that it helps to have at least be in that world so you can speak the lingo and what in that case, players, but what the people are thinking. And you're immersed in that world, but you don't have to be the Wayne Gretzky or Babe Ruth of whatever. I don't think to necessarily coach on that. By that being said, I love what you're doing, Pete, because you're in that world, which is a great niche if you're working with furniture store people and owners and mattress store owners, because I don't think I've come across anyone that dialed in with it. Most people, I'm a business coach, or maybe I'm a business coach for dentists or something like that, but not that niche. So yeah, sorry, Kyle, that's a long answer with it. I think that if you're a 19-year-old kid coming out of high school, it's going to be very tough to go out there and say, hey, I'm going to help you become a 7-8 figure earner. Although a lot of them on Facebook are saying that, the 19, 20-year-olds or whatever. You need to have some experience, I think, or be in that world to have any credibility and to have that confidence.
Yep. And, I'm 62 years old, so I notice things as time goes by, and I'm amazed at how many truly great coaches were average players or weren't even good enough to make the pros. They were just college players. They loved the game. Some of them got hurt, and the closest thing they could get to playing was coaching. But the real superstars, I think, have problems. They don't have to be as fundamentally sound, Mark, as a less gifted athlete. A less gifted athlete has to do the mechanics perfectly for her or him to have a chance. And I think that's true in business too. I think that there are people with just incredible charisma. and they get by with that, and they're not as good at blocking and tackling as they should be. And some of those guys and gals could do really well with a business coach to help them with some of their blocking and tackling. One of the things I really wanted to ask you about is, because um, you've hired coaches, you're a coach yourself, you coach coaches, so you're kind of immersed into this world, and you have a perspective that there's nobody else that I know of has this exact perspective. And when you look at the coaches who do really great things, like get unbelievably great results, what are some of the characteristics that you see in those coaches and or behaviors that you see in those coaches?
Well, those coaches are usually they're usually invested in the client getting the results without being overly invested, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So they're not the types that there's a lot of people getting into this world that their dream is to not even talk to anyone. They just want to release programs for $2,000, hit whatever, and it's on autopilot, and people are paying them, and then they're off on the beach, with their toes in the sand and sipping drinks and enjoying life. And now, on the flip side of it, you get some coaches that are so invested that even if the client isn't the right fit, they're not motivated, they're not an action taker, then they're going to commit themselves to try to get them across the finish line, so to speak. And I know, because I used to be like that in 2014, 2015. I took on some clients that weren't great fits, and I just wanted them to get results so bad that if they were only putting 75% in, I'd put 125% in just to get them over the finish line. And I don't do that anymore. I make sure that I'm vetting, and the people that I'm working with or choosing to work with are action takers and motivated, and they have to want to get the results for themselves. And not everybody has that in them, or they don't want to. They may say, yeah, I want to be successful or whatever, but are they really willing to give what it takes to be successful? And the longer you're at it as a coach, your spidey senses get more finely attuned. You get better at picking it out. A lot of get rich quick people out there, I don't really have any desire to work with them. I don't want to play in that world with it. I'll refer them off to coaches who I don't like. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. But I'm very picky who I work with, because it's not going to be a good experience for me. Not going to be good for them if it's not the right fit.
So I guess if you're a really great coach, you could be picky because you've got enough business coming at you. You can kind of pick and choose who you want. So that might be a pretty good tell right there. How busy are they, and how picky are they, and do they lay down the rules for engagement? One of the things that you said about Steve Hardison and Dan Kennedy is the same way. They make people come to them. They're kind of laying out how this is going to be, right? It's not going to be me flying to you and I'm going to be, running at your beck and call. There's going to be a process, and this is what you can expect from me, and this is what I expect from you, kind of a deal. How important do you think a unique perspective is for a business owner who's trying to either do better or probably take his or her business into another leap? So they're doing average, they want to do good. They're doing good, they want to do great. How important is perspective in your mind?
Well, I want to make sure I understand the question. You mean, with perspective, how important is it to want success, hire a coach, or what?
No, I misspoke. I'm actually talking about the coach's perspective.
Ah, yeah. I mean, one thing I would recommend doing, this really helped my coaching business. Michael Port has a book called Book Yourself Solid. And in that book, he talks about the red velvet rope policy. And what he suggests is you treat any business really, but in this case, we'll say coaching business, just like a brand new restaurant that just opened up in town, the hot restaurant that everybody wants to eat at, and you need reservations a long time in advance, or the hot club, where they've got the big bouncer at the door, it's got the clipboard, the list. Not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry could walk in through those doors of those places. There's going to be hurdles to get over it. There we go. Red velvet rope policy. So what I did, because I was frustrated in the early stages in that first year or so of coaching, I met some great people, worked with some great people, but I wasn't really happy charging lower amounts and then not having basically fun with those clients. And they a case where a client would cancel an appointment just over something, the sniffles or something. I get it. If someone's dog gets hit by a car, there's a serious family issue or whatever, then by all means we should reschedule. But these weren't great excuses for canceling coaching appointments. And what I found after I did the red velvet rope exercise, I got really, really specific on who my ideal client is. And it's stayed the same over the years. And I mean, for example, I have certain things like the client has to be an action taker. I don't want to have to badger them to take action. They need that initiative. They should be someone who's coachable, because not everyone is coachable. Some people, ego gets in the way. It's not going to work. And then there's other things, including pays me what I'm worth and pays me on time, which is very important. I'm not afraid to admit that. And if all those things are met, then basically that's a red velvet rope policy for my business. I'll take them on. When I first did that, I ended up dropping a few clients that weren't the right fit. And then everyone who came towards me, I would judge them against that criteria with it. So I would recommend that any coach or any entrepreneur go through that same practice and come up with a few key points, non-negotiables, that they say, hey, I'm not going to take anyone on unless X happens with it. But what do we see in the coaching world? There is criteria in the coaching world. The person has to be able to fog a mirror, or if they have like a pulse, then, hey, come on in. If you got the money, great. Here's the PayPal link and let's get going with it. And it's just not a good way to do business all the way around. So I recommend being choosy and setting some boundaries there and criteria.
Yeah. Guy Danes has a question or a comment. Got to quickly ask certain key questions of the client and vice versa to see if there is the right fit. Otherwise, a grudge sale or purchase. Yeah.
Great thing that I always look for, and I've learned from the past, it's never a good sign if a potential client asks what your money back guarantee is, or what's your refund policy. If they're asking that right off the hop. So I get this with coaching clients, but also with joint venture partners, because I have a flat fee JV package where they pay me X amount, then they keep 100% of sales for what we're doing. And I've had partners say, well, what's a guarantee, Mark? And I say, well, there's no guarantee in life, except, of course, the old adage, except death and taxes. And around this time that we're living in, I'd say COVID restrictions too. So there's three things, three things that we're dealing with. But besides that, there's no other guarantees. And usually they'll laugh and, they'll go ahead with it. But I've had some people pull back, and I'm like, hey, that's totally fine, because if they're not in it 100% and they're thinking about refunds and stuff like that before we even get started, then that's telling me something there. So that would be one suggestion, to keep your eyes open or your antenna up for that kind of question.
Yeah. And the same in my store owners' lives. You get a retail customer in there and they're asking you more questions about your refund policy than they are about how they're going to execute the delivery of the furniture or the mattress. It's time to ask some pretty deep questions and ask them, why are you asking me this question? Because there's a reason we need to get that resolved before we go any further.
Well, one thing I've discovered, Pete, you'd get a kick out of this, is I spell the word coach, God, 10, 20, 30, maybe even more times a day. So you total that up in the run of a year. Coach is probably the word that I use most. I went to sell a couch on Facebook Marketplace a few months back, about 6 months ago now. And I kept spelling coach when I was putting couch there. I'm like, geez, what is going on? So anyways, that's something I thought you would appreciate in the world that you're in. I can no longer spell couch consistently. I always spell it as coach when I go to do that.
You know, the French have a have a word for that. It's called the what is it? Defamation professional, and what it means is your mind actually becomes deformed. Your mind, depending on your profession and what you
Mm.
encounter. Pat Tinney, the man, the myth, the legend. This is an honor. A fellow Canadian, by the way.
Oh, there we go.
Author of Unlock and Yes, he is the master of negotiation. Fit is critical, or you will be hit by the time vampires. Little Dan Kennedy there for you, Patrick. Time vampires. That's straight up Dan Kennedy. That's good stuff. Yeah. Guy Danes is piling on and saying, correct, Patrick, perfect. Yep, I agree 100%. I got to get to a quick little chapter in my book. And for those of you who already have my book, we're going to be doing page 53. This will only take a minute. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Mark. Chapter 33. Your number one product is you. Successful store owners understand and embrace the fact that their number one product is their own self. Therefore, they can invest time and money in making this product the best it can be. In today's business world, there's no room for weak, personality-less, timid marketers. You must understand only the strong survive. Sorry, being a little Darwinistic there. Success starts with you, what you focus on, how you think, and what you do on a repeated and consistent basis. The good news is there are plenty of excellent books, courses, and people to help you to develop and maximize your personal skills. And my goal with this chapter is to simply remind you of the critical importance on focusing on self-development. When I wrote this book, I was 54 years old, so it was a little bit ago. I am 54 years old right now. I'm not, I'm 62. By the time that I get this book finished and published, I will be 55. I listen to most of my books in my van, still true. While I drive 20 to 30 hours a week, I probably drive 40 to 50 hours a week. I have turned my van into a learning institution. I suggest that you find time and make time to further your sales, business, and marketing and education. When you accept the fact that, like product research and development, personal research and development is equally important, you're on your way to bigger and better things. Here are a few simple ways to do this. Read, study, and the most important one, implement. If you drive a lot, listen and implement. Have an inner circle of trusted friends. Attend events with excellent speakers. Promise yourself you will always be a student. Always be learning. Celebrate and enjoy success, but be careful of complacency. What say you, Mark? What say you?
Well, I mean, I'm the same way. I'm to the point if I've got 5 minutes to spare, I'm throwing on Audible or a podcast or something, and I'm listening at 2x speed, which at first I thought was crazy, but a client of mine recommended it. He said, "Give it a try, Mark," and I tried it, and they sounded like Alvin and the Chipmunks. I was like, "Nah, this isn't going to work." And I told him the next I was talking to him, he goes, "No, give it a chance. Your brain will adjust and get used to it." I now can't listen to podcasts or audiobooks at 1x speed. Now, if it's a fast narrator or something, then I may go at 1.5. But by going at 2x, your brain gets used to it and you soak in a lot. So it's the same way, it's if I'm at the grocery store or anything like that, I'm usually listening to something. I have to be careful though, because I can go overboard. And what I've tried to make an effort to do every day is have thinking time I have my trusty moleskins, around, and often I'll shut the phone or turn it to do not disturb, have it in another room, and I will just take an hour to think and brainstorm and just see what comes out, what bubbles onto the paper from that too. So yeah, I agree with you. I'm all for learning. I mean, people in the 50s or 60s would have given anything to have access to the resources that we have now. Back in the day, even the 90s, when you'd have to get compact discs and to listen to things and stuff like that. Now it's so readily available. So I would say definitely soak it all in, but make sure that you're also creating stuff too, that you're not just a consumer, because I feel like a lot of people in the coaching world are personal development junkies or addicts, and they know everyone else's books, programs, everything else. It's like, well, then what are you putting out there? It's like, well, I haven't created it yet. I'm doing more research and getting used to it. It's like, no, don't get stuck in that analysis paralysis either. So it's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah. I love your your time hack. I got up to 1.4, but I've never pushed it to 2. That's I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it because that is a way to create that thinking time. And the way Dan Kennedy says it, don't be so busy working in your business that you don't have time to work on your business. And thinking time about your business is incredibly huge. As a business owner, you absolutely have to do that. Kyle Danes, there are 2 key aspects that will change your life: the right consistent focus and the right consistent focus. Absolutely, Kyle. What say you, Mark?
Or the third thing, the right consistent focus. Yeah. I love that word consistent. I know focus is a big part of that, but consistency is something that doesn't get talked about much. So I think it's an underrated superpower. And people say, well, how have you been able to do what you do, Mark, with coaching? It's a compound effect. Darren Hardy talked about just showing up every day, releasing that podcast, putting that post up. I've been doing daily emails since 2016 with it, and it just adds up. It snowballs with it. Unfortunately, in the coaching world, I find a lot of people will try something for maybe a week or a couple weeks, and they don't get a bunch of clients rushing in. So then they're off chasing the next bright, shiny object. Right now, 2 years ago, it was Clubhouse. Now everyone's gushing about Chat GPT and AI and stuff like that, which, by the way, I love that so many coaches and competitors are interested in Chat GPT, because then those who are putting their actual personality out there and not relying on AI to write all their content will stand out even more. Because I feel like a lot of lazy people are thinking, oh, this is great, I'm not going to have to work anymore. I'll just plug in a few prompts there and get the AI to spit out something. And you're already seeing a lot of this mediocre content.
Yeah.
Chat GPT isn't going to be able to replace, like you talked about before, Pete, your own personality and stuff like that. So if you're putting your personality out there, you're bold, unfiltered, and being different and not afraid to take risks, no one can copy you. You're uncopyable, if that's a word, with it. So I say bring on Chat. If people are relying on that, great. That'll just help others who aren't.
Yep. Yep. And, the most important thing anybody can do, and this goes for my store owners that own furniture and mattress stores, you want everything to be perfect, but it's not perfect. You don't like the way you look on video. You don't like your voice. Guess what? Get over it, because you're the only person that can't be copied. So go ahead, make that commercial. And if it's not perfect, guess what? It's you and it can't be copied. And all you have to do is look at Trent Bedden and Bowling Green, or look at my friend Scott Vaughn at Happy Z's in Paducah, Kentucky, and Benton, Kentucky, and ask yourself a question: could I do something similar to that? And the answer that you're going to come up with is yes, I can. And the most important thing you're ever going to do in any business is to be yourself. And trying to do it the easy way is sometimes the most dangerous way, because everybody can do it the easy way. Can you do it the hard way? Can you do it the original way? Can you do it the authentic way? When you put your heart and your mind and your soul out there, people feel that. And when they feel that, they come to you instead of one of your competitors. Listen, guys and gals, you're all selling rectangles, and the promise should be that they're going to wake up happy and pain free to the degree that they can wake up happy and pain free given their circumstances. Um, you make the difference. You need to be original. And I guess that might be one of the things that I would look for in a coach. Is he or she original, or are they just kind of playing safe and playing in the middle? Because chances are you as a store owner or a business owner or even a sales rep, I get a lot of sales reps listening to this. Unintended consequence. I never expected sales reps to listen to this, but I think I get more sales reps, Mark, than I do business owners. Be yourself. You're the only one, to Mark's point, that can't be copied. And when everybody starts blending into the same sounding drone, boring, you be the one who's being yourself, and you will find a lot more success. Let's kind of, Mark, Hi, Danes. Mark, words of wisdom from you. Good to see some gray hair. Ha ha ha.
I look at my Facebook memories every day. It'll show you what you posted on this day 1 year ago, this day 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and so on.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I had as many gray hairs, but showing me videos and pictures from 2014, 2015, where it's like a brownish red beard or whatever, and it's going progressively grayer and grayer. So there's no just for men or anything here. I'm just letting her age gracefully.
Patrick Tinney says it's about positive risk and commitment to creativity. Yes. And that is something, Mark, I would look for in a coach.
Yeah. For me too, like I'm drawn to people who put their message out there unapologetically. I could tell you daily emails I mentioned before, from 2014 to 2016, I did my emails like everyone else online pretty much. I'd mail maybe once a week, every 2 weeks, sometimes twice a week. And they were just blah boring because I was trying not to offend anyone or lose any subscribers. And I got ready to ditch email. I said, I'm going to focus on what's working. Screw email marketing, doesn't work or whatever. I had a guest on my podcast that challenged me to do daily emails, which I thankfully did. I said, I'm going to give it 30 days of daily emails. But the other thing I did with that is I said, I'm just going to take the filter off and say what I actually think, and if I lose subscribers, that's fine. They probably weren't the right fit for me anyways. And that's been like, I think 2,400 straight days or something like that without missing a day of emails. And yes, sometimes I poke the bear. I say things that offend people and they leave, but I draw a lot of people to me too, because I'm willing to at least say what I think. And I'm not pussyfooting around, which happens a lot. A lot of people in the coaching world. Well, perfect example, you can see the money picture back here. Your guys' American money looks much better than our Canadian Monopoly funny money. I had a coach tell me, oh, gee, you shouldn't have that picture there because you don't want people thinking you're greedy or that you like money too much. And I said, well, no, I said, I'm a proud capitalist. I love money, and I hope that my clients love money and they want to make more of it too. If you're putting out something that's good, you should be compensated for it. So I put this out there unapologetically, and I've gotten a lot of clients coming to me. And that's the reason why is they're like, I like that you actually admit that you like money, as opposed to a lot of people in the coaching world. It's wolves in sheep's clothing, where they try to pretend that oh, geez, no, I hate money. It's not about money. I want to impact 1 billion people in the world, and I could care less about money. Well, and often they're the greediest ones. They just don't put it right out there. So yeah, put your own personality out there, your own unfiltered opinion. You'd be surprised at who you draw into your world that way.
So I own a business. I'm looking for the perfect coach. What should I be doing in my head before I arrive at that place? Do you go through a selection process in your head of like what areas I'm strong in, what am I weak at, what do I need help with before selecting a coach? Or how do you recommend somebody start the process of selecting the perfect coach?
Well, I mean, at any time, I usually have one or two coaches I'm working with, and not necessarily just business. Like I hired a past client of mine, Donnie DeSante, recently. He's a health coach because I had worked with him before on the business side, helping him with his business. And then I wanted to lose a few pounds and get into better shape. I thought, who better than Donnie? He's great at what he does. So a lot of times we are coaching, we think, oh, it's just making money, stuff like that. Well, there's lots of other coaches in different things. To answer your question, what do you look for? I'm a little bit spoiled because I've done so many podcast interviews and been around so long that I know a lot of coaches, and they're already, like Donnie is right there in my Rolodex, so to speak. So I trust them and reached out to them. But I would go with asking your friends or people you know who they had good experiences with, if they were working with similar coaches. I think personal referrals are always good. Don't believe what you just see in the Facebook ad or something like that. Spoiler alert, there are people who embellish on the internet, and it's a bit of a wild west. My rule of thumb for the internet, I assume that everybody's full of shit until they prove otherwise. If they prove me wrong, and that tends to work. But don't just hire because, oh, Jesus, person on Facebook ad said they can make me 8 figures in the next 3 months, or whatever with it. So personal referral, listen, nowadays we've got podcasts, books, everything else. You could almost build a relationship with someone without ever talking with them. So for example, Ben Settle is someone who I've learned a lot from email marketing, about email marketing from. I felt like I knew Ben before I had him on my show a couple times and stuff, because I subscribed to his print newsletter, Email Players. I bought a number of his books, which weren't cheap because he specifically charged a lot for books. Listened to a bunch of his old podcasts when he had that in, all this other stuff. Then I had him on my show a couple times. So I already felt like I knew him there, and I felt really good with purchasing and investing with him as well. So yeah, I mean, there's a few tips. If you're ever stuck, shoot me a message, because I probably interviewed or know a coach in that world that I could recommend some good people with it, just because I've had a chance to meet so many coaches.
Are there any hard no's for you? You're interviewing someone to be a coach. Warning signs. Do not go any further.
Well, I like to ask them why they're becoming a coach. So, I want to know about their motivation. And although I talked about earlier, I'm a fan of money and I want my clients to want to do well and make a lot of money. It helps if there's another why that's in there. Like, why do they want to make money? There's got to be something else in there. One of my past clients, originally when we started working together, that's probably the most common answer I get from coaches. What's your goal? Why are you doing this? Or what's your magic number? If we're talking a year from now that you want to be earning per month. $10,000 is probably the most common answer. 10,000 a month with it. And then I got digging down a little bit more and come to find out the reason why he wanted to build up a 6-figure business and grow from there. His mother had some health challenges, so he wanted to be able to make enough that he could support her basically when she wasn't able to work with it. When we turned the focus on that instead of just the money, he really took off, because that was a more powerful motivator for him, like what he was using the money for with it. So I would say find your why is an important thing, or the client's why. In my case, I want to know why they're doing what they're doing, because if it's just money and that's it, there's going to be those peaks and valleys, and when they're down in the valleys, they're going to have a tough time getting back up, because they're looking at their bank account. It's not where they thought it would be. They thought they would make $1 million in a couple months. They're not there and they want to quit or whatever. I'd much prefer work with someone that's got something emotional attached to it as well.
So he just modeled for you exactly. If you're looking for a coach, find a coach who digs to find your real why. Because if he or she does not care enough about you to find out your real why, they're not really committed to getting the kind of results that you really need to get. The reason you dug for that, Mark, was because you really wanted to light a fire underneath them, because you know from experience that just wanting what $10,000 buys isn't enough. It's not enough. But taking care of your mom, That's huge.
Mm.
That's a fire. I mean, you just poured gas on the fire, and you will have no problem with compliance when you dig deep down and you find the real why. That's wow. That's great.
Yeah, that client actually, there's another lesson I learned from him, which popped up, and how to motivate yourself to do something you have to get done. So we're having trouble getting his Facebook group up and running. Like for whatever reason, he wasn't getting that darn group open. So every week I'd be like, "Did you get your group going? I didn't see an invite or whatever." No, I'll get it done for next week. And I really want to get that community open and growing for him because it was an important part of what we were doing. So what I ended up telling him is, this this is kind of a backwards way of motivating yourself. I did not come up with it. I think Jack Canfield talked about it, and a few other people have. But basically, I said, "What's a person or an organization that you absolutely hate? You can't stand what they stand for, and or whatever." And he said, "Well, probably the KKK, or whatever." So I said, okay, so will you agree if your Facebook group isn't open by the time we do our call next week, will you donate $1,000 to the KKK? And he was kind of taken aback because that's not something you expect to talk about in a coaching call. But he agreed to it. I said, okay, we have you on record. You're going to donate $1,000. Suddenly that lit a fire under him because he would be donating to a group that he obviously was 180 degrees away from, did not agree with. He could never probably run for president if he donated to the KKK, and that came out. Make a long story short, he ended up opening the group in time. Surprise, surprise. He didn't have to donate to that organization. So if you're struggling to get your book out into the world or to do something you need to be doing, give a friend a post-data check or something. Just say, hey, here's $1,000 donation to whatever politician they hate or organization or whatever. If I don't have my book finished by whatever date, send this off for me. And so it's kind of negative motivation in a way, but it's whatever gets the job done. And that came from that client as well, the exact same one that was his mother was his motivation.
Wow. Lots of great tips here. Thank you so much, Mark. I'll share a quick story with you. When Paul Castaigne was coaching me, and we had agreed that I should do a podcast, I just dragged my feet. So finally, he said, "Do we or do we not agree that you're going to do a podcast?" We agree. He goes, "There's never going to be a perfect time. You're not going to like it at the beginning. You're going to look back after you do 50 shows, and you're going to look at yourself and laugh at how bad you were when you started. And when you do 100 shows, you're going to look back and you're going to say, oh my Lord, how bad was I?" He goes, "But you have to do it. Now, what's the date we're going to do this?" And so I gave him a date. I think it was like 2 weeks away. He goes, "Okay." He goes, "Have you been happy with the results that we've gotten with the coaching?" I go, "Yeah, absolutely." Now, this is a coach's coach here. He said, "Good." He goes, "We've agreed that we're going to do this and that you're going to launch, right?" Yep. He goes, "You've given me one excuse after the other for weeks on end, right?" Yep. "If you don't do it by this day, we're done." I mean, he actually threatened to pull me as a client over it, and that's what got me to do my first podcast. So that takes a lot of chutzpah.
Well, it's so easy to push it to the back burner, right? There's always something else you could be doing just to distract yourself from actually doing what you should be getting done. So good job. And you guys kept working together. The show got up there. Everyone's happy.
Yep. Mark, somebody watches this show and they said, "I like this, Mark. I want to talk to him." How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, the best way, naturalborncoaches.com. That's the main website. I'm in the Coaching Jungle group a lot. That's coachingjungle.com. We'd love to see you there as well. So, yeah, either places you can find me.
Awesome. Mark, thank you so much. I hope you keep cool and keep warm in Canada. We're pretty icy right now here. I was going to put a dress shirt on, but I went with the flannel instead today.
True story. This past weekend, we're Celsius, of course, in Canada. Got as low as -47 on Saturday morning, and I converted it to Fahrenheit. It's -52.6 Fahrenheit. Now it warmed up to a balmy -30 Celsius, which God, I don't even know what is. It's still cold for Fahrenheit with it. And I actually have, I don't know if you can see it. This is my friend today. It's a heat dish. Although it is milder now, we're getting into balmy beach weather. It's probably 30 Fahrenheit today or something with it. But yeah, that's okay. Great part of the world. I love Canada. It's just January, February. I could do without.
I hear you. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for watching and contributing.
Thanks.